What if the flood wasn't a total reset, and the ultimate corruption actually survived? Some ancient texts suggest a chilling reality. The giant bloodline found a way across the water. If that's true, the apocalypse didn't end the nightmare, just hit it. What inside you still belongs to them. We are taught that the Great Flood was the ultimate cleansing, a divine eraser scrubbing the earth clean of a corrupted hybrid species known as the Nephilim. But certain interpretations of ancient texts propose a disturbing contradiction. If the annihilation was absolute, why do the giants reappear almost immediately in the narrative of human history? The contradiction isn't just a theological puzzle. Debated theory indicates it might be the smoking gun of a covered-up survival story. We are investigating the possibility that the reset failed, or perhaps was engineered to fail. The standard story doesn't account for Agia of Bashan. Some ancient Jewish traditions propose a narrative that shatters the concept of Noah's exclusive survival. These texts suggest Og, a colossal remnant of the antediluvian world, didn't drown. Instead, certain interpretations propose he secured his survival by clinging to the outside of the ark itself. If we entertain this possibility, the ark wasn't just a vessel of salvation. It was unknowingly a carrier of the very corruption it was built to escape. Scholars have questioned this account for centuries, but its existence in ancient commentaries suggests the idea of a post-flood survivor wasn't always forbidden knowledge. This changes everything we understand about the post-flood world. But that creates a contradiction. If Og survived physically, how do we explain other giants? This is where the theory changes, moving from a single survivor to something more insidious. A second incursion theory debated among some scholars indicates that the original transgression of the Watchers wasn't a one-time event. Some ancient texts suggest that a separate, perhaps smaller, group of fallen angels descended after the flood waters receded, repeating the forbidden genetic meddling with human women. This theory proposes the giants weren't survivors of the flood, but a new generation born after it, suggesting the divine judgment didn't solve the problem, it only delayed it. And this is where the theory moves from the external to the internal. Another, far more disturbing interpretation proposes the Nephilim didn't survive on the water, but inside the ark's human cargo. This theory posits a form of genetic dormancy. Scholars have questioned if one of Noah's daughters-in-law carried the dormant Nephilim gene within her DNA. If true, Noah's family didn't just carry the future of humanity. They unknowingly carried a ticking genetic time bomb. This interpretation suggests the flood was a biological cleansing that failed to eliminate the target DNA, which was integrated into the new human population. But here's where it gets disturbing. Certain interpretations of the Dead Sea Scrolls hint at an advanced, almost terrifying knowledge possessed by the antediluvian civilization. They weren't just primitive giants. Some scholars propose they were masters of mingling, a term that ancient texts use that could be interpreted as genetic manipulation of different species. If the Nephilim were messing with the very fabric of life, the flood might have been a desperate intervention against a world that was already becoming irreversibly altered. That alone raises a serious question. If they could alter life, could they not also find a way to preserve it against a deluge they might have foreseen? That raises a serious question about the flood itself. If the Nephilim were this advanced, and if their spirits are the demons described in texts like the Book of Jubilees, did they truly lose? Certain interpretations suggest the death of their physical bodies was part of a transition. This theory indicates the flood didn't destroy them, merely liberated their spirits to influence humanity unseen. Scholars have questioned if the post-flood giants were simply the most overt manifestation of this continuing spiritual influence, a manipulation of human genetics from a disembodied state. This proposes a form of survival that is spiritual, continuous, and far more dangerous than physical giants. But this isn't just ancient history. It might be a blueprint. A debated theory suggests these ancient events are setting a precedent. If the genetic line or the spiritual influence survived the first global judgment, some scholars have questioned what that means for the future prophecies that mirror the days of Noah. Certain interpretations propose we are not in the aftermath of the Nephilim, but in the middle of their long-term plan. This suggests the post-flood giants were merely a phase, and the real manifestation is yet to come. This may not be the full story, and this is where the theory changes again, moving from genetics to geography. Some researchers ask, did the water really cover every square inch of the planet, Or was it a regional event that achieved the necessary biological reset in a specific area? If the flood was regional, as some scholars of ancient Near Eastern history propose, then Nephilim tribes in other parts of the world like the Americas or Deep Asia would have been completely unaffected. This theory indicates that while one branch of humanity was being reset in the Middle East, the ancient hybrid bloodlines continued uninterrupted elsewhere, only to converge with Noah's descendants later. But here's where the scenario becomes truly disturbing. If we accept that the extinction was not absolute, we must question the very nature of the ark. Some interpretations suggest that Noah's ark was not just a wooden vessel, but a biological vault. A debated theory proposes that antediluvian knowledge, the science of the Watchers, was preserved in pillars or emerald tablets hidden within the ship's own structure. This would indicate that the flood did not erase forbidden technology. It merely forced it through a period of quarantine. If this lineage of knowledge survived, who holds it today? This idea of technological survival leads us to deep shelters. A more radical theory, advocated by investigators of apocryphal texts, proposes that the Nephilim possessed an understanding of the earth that far surpasses our modern science. Certain interpretations suggest they utilized vast networks of caves and intraterrestrial cities to weather the storm. While the waters cleansed the surface, the fallen intelligence remained protected in the depths, waiting for the recession of the waters to re-emerge. This would explain why post-flood civilizations, such as Sumer and Egypt, suddenly appeared with astronomical and architectural knowledge impossible for the era. But that raises a serious contradiction. Why didn't they retake total control immediately? Some scholars have questioned if the survival of the Nephilim was not physical, but rather a spiritual infestation. According to the Book of Jubilees, when the physical giants died, their spirits did not go to rest. They became the demons that plague humanity. This theory indicates that the Nephilim survived as bodiless entities, capable of manipulating the human mind and, eventually, genetics through rituals or possession. If this is true, the war of the flood never ended. It simply shifted dimensions, becoming invisible to our eyes. And this is where the theory shifts to something that affects us directly. Some interpretations of ancient manuscripts suggest that the ultimate goal of these survivors was latent hybridization. This proposes that the blood of the giants did not disappear, but was diluted into the human population to ensure its permanence. Scholars have questioned if certain lines of power in modern history are, in fact, offshoots of these survivors who crossed the barrier of the flood. If their DNA was inserted into humanity, how can you be sure that your inclinations, your fears, and even your bone structure belong entirely to the lineage of Noah? But the intellectual discomfort escalates when we look at the discrepancies in the Sumerian king list. This ancient text lists Spurd's rulers who reigned for absurd periods both before and after the flood. Certain interpretations propose that the divine leadership pour, Nephilim truly ended. It simply camouflaged itself. The theory indicates that post-flood giants, like the Rephaim or the Anakim mentioned in biblical texts, were merely the foot soldiers, while the true Nephilim elite remained hidden, governing through chosen priesthoods and monarchies. This suggests we are living in a reality shaped by beings that the divinity attempted to erase from existence. This leads us to the most dangerous connection with the present. The prophetic phrase, "as it was in the days of Noah," is frequently cited as a warning of a future return. But what if it's not about a return, but an activation? Some interpretations suggest that Nephilim DNA survived the flood in a state of dormancy, a computer code waiting for a signal to execute. Researchers debate whether the modern obsession with genetic alteration and transhumanism is an external impulse, an attempt by this ancient consciousness to reconstruct the colossal bodies they lost in the waters. What was thought to be evolution may actually be the reconstruction of something forbidden. But here lies the point of greatest tension. If the flood was a cleansing attempt that failed, what does that say about our current security? Certain interpretations suggest that the post-flood world is a compromised system. The theory indicates that the barrier between the human and the fallen has been permanently breached. Scholars have questioned if modern phenomena of sightings and unexplained events are just the cracks through which these original survivors continue to operate. If they found a way to cross the greatest disaster in planetary history, what would stop them from being here now, watching their millennial plan unfold? This investigation offers no comforting answers, only a disturbing conclusion. The history we are told is a narrative of victory that ignores the survivors in the shadows. Some interpretations suggest that the ark was not the end of corruption, but the vehicle that transported it into the new world. And what if the real reason no one talks about how the giants appeared after the flood is because those who write the history are their descendants? If the cleansing failed, the question is not if they survived, but where they are hiding today. And, more importantly, what inside you still belongs to them. This may not be the full story.